Mr. Ture, and I'm here on FIA podcast on knife crime.
I'm Ollie. I'm from Stone Soup Academy, an alternate provision in Nottingham, and I also lead with a bunch of other people at the school an event that we do every year called Stand Up to Knife Crime, which celebrates all the stuff that we do with the young people throughout the year.
Excellent. Yeah, we're just gonna have a discussion.
The first not question but topic is the recent incidents and community response.
Yeah.
So the discussion topic basically is the masked individuals brandishing zombie knives outside of schools.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of that happening in no matter where it's happening, you hear more and more of it going on in the city.
Yeah.
And in the news, but I think it's important to kind of, without getting political about it, the news can talk about so many different things and kind of push certain things all the time. But I think you should concentrate on the reason we've done the event Stand Up to Knife Crime is more around talking about the community and talking to young people, talking to people involved in the community and actually finding out what the root cause of it is, what the problems are with knife crime. And not just knife crime, because I feel like it's becoming a bit of it's just the go-to word. It's almost like knife crime. Like what we're trying to concentrate on is youth violence, and they're the kind of, and that can be anything, not just around knife crime. Like youth violence is an issue as well. So kind of we're called Stand Up to Knife Crime. I'm always wanted to speak stand up to youth violence and look at that as a kind of more of a topic of conversation, because I feel like there's so much. Knife crime goes into so many different things. I think certain people are trying to concentrate on what's happening. So in terms of people outside of schools and all that stuff, you almost don't know the story about what's going on there. It's we're talking to individuals a lot and saying, let's kind of talk to you lot on actually what's going on and what's happening. And I've always said, there was one student who said to me, what's the point of doing the event, or what's the point in getting together as a community? What's the point in it? And I said, if it changes one person's kind of perception on it, one person's kind of view on it, just a little bit, to a point where that person makes a different decision, or he talks to someone about making a different decision, then suddenly that's like a knock-on effect, because we know what happens if someone does, do a knife crime attack, or, it's an effect that goes on to not just one person, but families of the victims, family of the perpetrator, families of everyone, the community, the friends. If you can change one person's mindset on that just a little bit, to not do it or to think differently, then you're changing not the life of one person, you're changing the lives of loads of people around you, and hopefully that kind of breeds a little bit. And I think for me and the whole team of when we do the knife crime event, it's not saying, we're here to stop knife crime, we're here to stop youth violence. It's we're here to kind of just talk about it, try and help people through it a little bit, get the conversation going, and also celebrate the amazing stuff that young people are doing as well, because there's some amazing things that young people are doing, with music, with film. So I think it's about that as well. I mean, I've gone off on a tangent there, and I don't even know what the question was, but yeah.
Thank you. I think that's really insightful, and I think that the whole idea of having young people or you carrying zombie knives outside of school, you could actually consider that in many levels. Of course, it will be terrifying for young people in schools. Parents who are there to pick their kids up will be terrified as well, and the teachers, because they will feel unsafe. But I think there is another fundamental question we'll have to ask: where is law enforcement? What is it exactly we're doing in terms of really deterring young people from actually openly brandishing knives or whatever weapons it might be? Because we know when we say there's a danger, young people will carry a knife, but they always conceal those knives. But if it gets to a point where they can, out of volition, actually saw it, so that means fundamentally there is an issue, there is a breakdown in terms of deterrence or maybe law enforcement, or perhaps there is something about our environment where these young people are coming from, they're grooming each other, and then there isn't even a fear for crime anymore. So I think when we get to that stage, it becomes more of an organized crime now. So that becomes a completely new level. So I think more of the reason why what you've mentioned, we need to have more of those events to actually engage young people, because I think what we are doing mainly at this stage is more of firefighting. is those who are actually carrying knife who went to tackle on the street with the stop and search and other whatever laws we might enforcement or measures we are adopting against them. But I think we need to start a bit early to really start with sensitization so that these young people would actually know the dangers of carrying a knife and also the impact it has on victims and generally on the environment, the public well-being. Because if that incident happened in a particular school, you know that local area becomes unsafe for family, people with young children or families, and then you will realize even economically that will impact on the house the house prices and all of those things within the local area. So it has a far-reaching consequence for the public, and I think more proactive action needs to be adopted to decide to prevent that.
Yeah. So there was a incident in Primark, I think.
Yeah.
A week. I don't know how long ago it was.
A few weeks ago, yeah.
It was about 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And this was like the second or third one within a week. So just have like a discussion about how frequent these knife crime incidents keep happening.
Yeah, well, you can talk about frequency of it happening, I think, and what was really positive about it, there was obviously the community event that happened that I went down to with a few members of the team as well, and we spoke in Market Square. But again, we're talking about it going, they happened, and we're acting almost like it wasn't happening before when it was. And there's always a lot of talk of going, let's get together, let's talk about it, and that's brilliant, and we should be doing that. The knife crime event, which is a community event that we do once a year, isn't going to solve everything. It's the work day to day. And I think, again, when you talk about the specific attacks, you can start to go down a bit of a rabbit hole of us going, let's just talk about these three things that have happened quite recently, when we already know that so many knife crime attacks happen, or so many violent crime attacks happen throughout the city, not just in Nottingham, but everywhere, that don't get reported on. So I feel like the concentration needs to be just concentrating on talking to young people, getting stuff that they can get involved with more often. Someone who works on the team with me has spoke for years about getting young people together early. So like not talking, you can do all these big talks in assemblies and go, this is a knife, it's bad, and X, Y, Z. And, these kids aren't stupid. If you talk to them on a level 1-to-1, they know it's wrong. They know they shouldn't be doing it. They know that they want bigger things and better things. It's not like they're alien to that. They're intelligent, funny, charismatic people. But the pressures that are under them at the minute are high, and then it makes them do daft things. It doesn't make them not daft things. They are. But yeah, a member of the team said, get young people together early so they haven't got those issues early on. And again, this isn't about stopping it all round, but if you get primary schools to meet up with different primary schools in different clubs and in different schools, and actually when they're older and they bump into each other, and I know it sounds funny, they go, oh, I knew him, he was playing football with me, and someone from the team said that, and it's something that we really want to do and push it. That's the type of stuff that you need to be doing, where you almost don't know if it is making an impact, but when you start to speak to people, go, oh no, that thing actually really helped me, that thing really helped me there, that thing really helped me there. And the problem is, people don't report on those bits, they'll report on the negative things that are happening. We're always trying to push the positive and saying, this student who was involved with this isn't anymore and is doing this. This student is doing this now because of this. And they're all like, he's in university now, this person's working here. And there's so many positive stories as well as the negative ones. And I think you have to share them quite equally. Otherwise, you can start to go down a bit of a rabbit hole of saying there's always 1,000 different issues when there's 1,000 different solutions as well.
Yeah. For my take on that, I think I don't really know the specifics around those three incidents or the last incident that happened at Primark. So, but what I can say is it is always one incident too many.
Yeah.
When it comes to knife crime, but I think reflecting on the interactions I've had with young people, community members, and also professionals, youth workers, that we've had training on the FOIA that for all these different categories of people. Now, I recall vividly in one of the sessions, one of the youth workers actually flagged that up. I think he was, because it was an online session, so he was participating from London, and the fact that the way the media hype
Yeah.
the knife crime incidents and all of those, like you said, they will pick on the negative side of it, and that gets amplified even further. So the young people sometimes felt everybody's carrying a knife, so you need to carry one for your own protection. And of course, they never realize if you carry one, you're likely to be a victim. But the fact that the media, the professionals who are these are youth workers, they flagged that up. And I think I recall it was a really, really kind of engaging conversation that happened within that group. Everybody noticed, for example, if you consider the knife crime incidents that happen in London and other cities, Edinburgh has the highest number. But it's never been seen as that. It's always London and Birmingham and other places that really get picked on by the media, the main media houses. And so I agree with you. It's like we tend to talk about the negative side of things. Sometimes we downplay all the positive things that are happening around there, and the sort of impact community organizations and other voluntary sector organizations are doing that are directly engaging with young people. But yeah, so the incidents, we need to do more. Definitely, I think this needs to be more concerted effort from the community, the family members, and also peer educators among young people themselves. Because, like you said, the minutes, they're not stupid.
No.
They know the dangers associated with knife crime, but why is it that they still cannot help themselves? So we really need to interrogate these questions even further.
So how do you feel the community kind of like played a part in the response to these incidents, and kind of like say how the community would host a peaceful protest after these incidents happen, and then how impactful do you think these protests are?
Yeah, so I've always said it doesn't matter what you're doing to try and combat it, it's doing something is the main thing. So you can look at that one community event after the few weeks back and go, oh, there was no point in that. But there is. It's what you do after it. And as long as people keep doing them, it will make an impact. And like I said, it's the people that talk about the positives all the time, they talk about the negatives, it's much easier to do. I've always said, and I say it to the students all the time, positivity breeds positivity, but it's definitely harder to do than negativity sometimes because it breeds quicker. So I think if you can try and be positive and talk about the positives with them, it's amazing. So, and when we talk about young people, that's what we're trying to do with it. So yeah, they are important to do all the time, but it's what you do after it.
That's true. Yeah. So that question on what could the protests that the community actions that the various natures of it. I think protest has to have a purpose. For example, if maybe it is that people felt the service is underfunded, maybe so the government or the city council is cutting funding in many areas. For example, the community centers where young people within local areas are able to meet and engage in positive activities, and then, like you mentioned, they identify each other from there. They know each other. They bond when they go out. Most likely, they don't get into confrontation because they know each other. They've done something positive with each other. So I think that has to be the points that when we do these protests, we've got to highlight those. But in terms of specific actions, the community, so when we say community, we mean parents and families also have got a role to play in here. And I think there is another challenge. For example, when we we look at issues of children of migrant heritage, for example, the first and second generation immigrant families, there is that intergenerational disconnect. So I think we really need to work on those. So there has to be a better dialogue at homes, but there has to be a better way to maybe as a community to be able to actually bring the young people together and actually have something within the communities at the community level as well. We shouldn't just expect the police to be able to handle all of this, because often when the police get involved, it's already out of hand, and then the law has to take its course, and then it becomes even harder.
Cool. So that's a nice segue onto my next question. So, what measures do you think can be implemented to prevent similar occurrences happening in the future?
Yeah, so I think, for example, if I look at let's say what we do at FY, for example. So FY initially started more like a youth engagement forum, more of giving the young people a platform, those who have had negative experience with knife crime, either as perpetrators or victims, to actually come out and also talk to their own colleagues or other young people about the sort of impact that has had on them. So that is where it started from. But of course, the organization had to adapt, considering the changing nature of the phenomena or the incidents or the issues around knife crime. So we've actually moved that into more like get having some sort of an engagement with the probation services to actually directly engage with young people who have had who actually been behind the bars for a knife related crime. And in that, we introduced a qualification, which was through an open awards qualification called Recognizing and Safeguarding Against Knife Crime. So we were actually running those sessions for those people, very much tailored, because sometimes we had to work Saturdays and Sundays because they don't really want to. It's more like supporting them to rehabilitate back into the community. But it is more like giving them the opportunity to reflect on their own pathways, their journey, where they started from. And often the school and the challenges they had at school often is highlighted as one of the factors, because when you give them the opportunity, they will think about the environment they grew up in, the families sort of thing, the support they had, and where they feel, and often they will use the word, "That's why I messed up." They will say this, and often that is a good starting point for us, because that is where you start from. And then you give them the opportunity for them to reflect where they think things went wrong and what is it that they think they should be able to do now to make up for that. So we have done that, but also we extended the program to community members, like I said, the youth workers as well. So this was a qualification. They will come in to do over 6 weeks, and we directly engage with them. It's more like it is participant led. All we have to do is just to facilitate those conversations that happen within that. But yeah, but then that has also evolved slightly as well. We recently designed a project where we actually think it needs to be more proactive, so for the young people themselves, to actually reach young people, not in the school settings, but at their grassroots football clubs. That is something that has been supported by Patra, to actually go there, meet them in that setting, and actually engage with them, with the younger ones, with their parents as well.
Yeah.
And parents needed that space to be able to directly engage with their young people on the worries that they have when they leave home. And we found that really, really impactful. Yeah, so like I said, that is what part of what is being done. But of course, as third sector organizations, we need funding to be able to continue on those works within the community, and yeah, for the wider benefit of young people.
Yeah. My answer to all these type of things are always around it's communities getting together, talking more, judging less. And it's the simplest way of me putting it, I guess.
So yeah, in terms of like educational interventions and early intervention, what type of the programs that they kind of put in place, what are your thoughts on like the lesson plans on knife crime being introduced in schools?
I don't think they're not necessarily bad, but it's all about how you deliver anything. So I think you can put presentations together and put packets together and packages together and what you're doing and stuff, but it's all about whoever's delivering it being sincere around what they're delivering. So students and young people are only going to listen to people who are genuine. If there's an art teacher who hates art, they're not going to listen. If there's a science teacher who goes, I don't want to do any experiments, not going to do this, it's just going to sit down, we're going to look at a book, it's going to be less engaging. So it's the same thing when it comes to this. It's not like suddenly reinventing the wheel or anything. These are all fantastic, and resources are amazing, because that's what we're talking about, resources. But it's about who's delivering the resources and if they're being genuine about it. And again, it comes down to not around judgment, but just talking. And it's just open conversation. So I think they're really positive but it's around how you deliver them, and don't just do it as a tick box exercise. Have it as someone who genuinely wants to do it and talk about those things, and then you're always onto a winner, I think.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, I think you can't really put that any better than the way you put it. So
Thank you.
Effectively, so they would say the quality of your intervention depends on the interior content of the intervener. So if you're the one delivering it, if you're passionate about it, then the results source, and the young people will pick that up straight away, and they will, I agree 100% with that. And I think I don't really know the specific of, because I'm not really operating within the mainstream education anymore, so I don't really know what sort of curriculum contents actually being delivered around knife crime in the schools presently. But what we do at our own end, we kind of devise our own content for training for young people. So in that, what we actually include is actually to educate them on what actually knife crime constitutes. When we hear knife crime, what does it constitute? Does it only mean stabbing? Does it only mean stabbing people with knife or carrying a knife? So we really try to make sure that the young people quite understand when we say knife crime, what does it actually mean? And then often we look at the kind of the environment that young people grew up in. How could that be potentially a factor for them? And then here they are able to reflect on the challenges they had, and sometimes they felt, well, they didn't have any powers to say no. They had older boys who had more influence over them. They can't really say no. They just kind of follow them around. Yeah. Sometimes they're not even aware. They just get themselves into that situation, and then they become a victim, and then often they be considered as a perpetrator when they're actually victims. And then we do that we take them through different statistics in terms of the actual number of knife crime. We look at homicide numbers and generally violent crime. And then we will take them through what sort of help is out there for them. And lately we've also included awareness around the joint enterprise law, which so many of them are falling victim of because they don't quite understand what it means. And in that, we find that really interesting because there is a video version that we actually go through with the young people, and then they will watch that for 7-8 minutes, and then we ask them, who do you think actually is going to get charged of a murder? And then it's really interesting. They'll be naming individuals from there, all the characters, and then when the verdict came out, all of them are charged with murder, but at varying degrees. And then the silence that happens in the room. And that is where the education happens. Because most of them could see themselves in that kind of situation because they cannot snitch on their friends anymore. Because they feel like, I can't do that. If I know my friend is carrying a knife, I wouldn't call the police. Yeah. Well, I'm not carrying it, but you know he is or she is carrying.
A question that I wanted to ask was, have you ever seen anything that's been tried and tested in an education system or just in general that's actually taken young people from knife crime and rehabilitated them, basically?
Again, you're going, it's difficult because then you talk about like a specific thing around just, again, knife crime, which I guess I struggle with a little bit. Mm-hmm. Because it's just a factor of what they're going through. So they're not doing everything right and they just happen to carry a knife. There's loads of things going on and loads of issues. And yeah, I've seen loads of examples of it working in a positive way. I've worked where I work now at Stone Soup Academy for nearly 12 years, which is an alternate provision in Nottingham. And I've probably seen, I can't count how many times we've helped students make the right decision, small term. But then, I mean, I'll just talk about one student in particular who now works at HMRC, where one member of the team who works with us called Jordan, like literally just put a lot into him. But that student trusted him. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, trusted him. And told him about different paths and different things you can do. And it's not make-believe. It's not going like, he wasn't a footballer. So there's no point sitting down with him and going, you're going to be a footballer and this is where you should go. But he was never going to do that. So there's no point selling that dream to that particular student. It was about the things that he can do, and it's there in front of you if you just want it a little bit, and then I'll help you the rest of the way. And then over time, that moment of Jordan giving 95% and that one student giving 5% suddenly turns into 90-10, 80-20, and my maths is going to go wrong, so I'm not going to carry on. But it will eventually go 50-50 to a point where that student now works at HMRC full-time, doing amazing, when he was on a path that wasn't going to be a positive one. And so you can't say he was going to get involved with knife crime and all these things were going to happen, but there is a potential when you go down that route that you can. So I've seen loads and loads of examples. That's just one of them, but loads, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really a good example there. And I think when I used to work in the primary schools, I think they had their project. I don't know, basically that focused on alcohol and drugs abuse, really more a tailored education for young people, and they were delivered in selected schools. I suppose I'm not sure whether there was a universal coverage for all the primary schools, but I think that the information in that particular pack and how that program was delivered, it was often delivered by the PCSOs.
Yeah.
So they've got in-depth knowledge of what they were talking about, and they know they've got the training as well to deliver as educationists or as teachers. But it's about how much passionate they are about that particular project and the change they envision in that project.
Yeah.
So that really comes. And I think when I sat in those classrooms, it often is the year sixes when they do the SATs before the end of the academic year is when we roll out those programs. And I think if something similar is actually designed for knife crime too, I could see it having an impact. But of course, it needs to be tailored because it doesn't mean the challenges that all the schools universally face are similar. The communities face different things. Even within those communities, we've got to recognize the unique challenges individual communities face within those wider community groups or areas. So we really need to make sure it is tailored to individual young people and the challenges and the environment they're growing up in. But I think education has to be the main focus to stop knife crime.
Yeah.
Because we cannot carry on firefighting. We've got to make sure it is proactive and it has to be educational in terms of engaging young people. And then once they become aware, then you're empowering them in the decision making. That way, they always make the right choices.
Cool. So yeah, that takes me on to like law enforcement strategies. So the Make Not Safe Again plan. What do you guys kind of think about that strategy?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know much about it, no, so I wouldn't want to do a load of bunch of jargon on it when I don't know.
No worries. But how do you feel like the police are kind of handling the knife crime situation?
It's difficult because I'll say the same thing I say to the students. So you because they'll have views on police or whatever. There's good people at their job and there's bad people at the job. In terms of what I think the police are doing in terms of knife crime, they're trying to combat it. No one wants it to happen, but it is a problem at the minute. But what's the saying? It takes a community to raise. What is it?
To raise a child.
Yeah, I can't remember now. Okay. It's a great quote. Put it up there. Yeah. Put it there on the thingy. I think it takes everyone. You can't just go, what are the police doing? Are they doing a good job? Is people in education, are they doing a good job? Are the parents doing it? It's everyone. And everyone's got to take some type of responsibility and accountability to helping young people. And it's also, like I said at the start, don't think it's going to solve it for everyone. And that's not what we're ever trying to do and say that's what I mean. Obviously, everyone wants that, but it's do the small things right, and then the big things will come from it, I think.
Yeah, so I think for me, the policing strategy, like we recognize there is a lot of efforts from the police to try and prevent or maybe to tackle knife crime. But I think there's a lot of suspicions. It's not something that we can actually not recognize from young people about the police. But of course, there is history in that. So there are issues like stereotyping and other things that young people felt the police are picking on them. But I think there is another thing around the police, the issue around inclusion. So the communities that the police are serving needs to be reflective of the police force. And we recognize there is a lot of efforts in the recruitment in that area. But I think that's one area the police probably needs to work a bit more on to make sure the communities that they're serving are actually a reflection of the force that is actually out there. So when kids go out, they actually see people like them. And perhaps those police officers will come from communities where these kids are coming from. They are fully aware of the challenges, and perhaps they know the few cultural nuances as well within these communities. Then they'll be able to find the a more appropriate language and approach in actually talking to these young people. So, but this has to be a process. But of course, the communities too needs to engage in that process because people the police could advertise and say, oh, we're recruiting, but people really need to put themselves out there to join the force so that they can help police their own communities as well.
So, could you guys kind of discuss recent legislative measures such as Ronan's Law, which requires retailers to report suspicious knife purchases and impose tougher penalties for selling knives to minors?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go into specifics of stuff that I don't really know too much about, and I guess
it's just
yeah. So I guess yeah. So for me, it's more. I say the same thing, and I'll go back to it. It's like yes, we should be looking at not selling knives to young people, or there being consequences for that if you do. But it goes back to if a student's trying to buy a knife, is why, and then it's there. We already know it's very easy to access a knife, whether you're trying to buy it or not. It's in your kitchen, so it's more try and focus on the young people again and the students that you're working with, and find out why they're going to potentially do that, rather than talking about everything else of going, oh, he shouldn't have bought that knife and he shouldn't. There's a consequence there. And by the time you've done all that, that student's gone and found a knife anyway. You're in the same predicament, aren't you? So.
Yeah, so yeah, I agree with you. It's about access. So we've got knives everywhere in the house, and then so that's where parents probably need to do a bit more to try and put them on locks and lock them away if they don't actually need them at that point. But when children are growing up and they get to a certain age, it doesn't always mean the parents are always able to have that level of control in the house, because you've got to go out and work, and then they might need access themselves to prepare some food for themselves. So you're not always there on the ground. And I think the introduction of the new law perhaps is more of a strengthening of an existing law, because it is illegal anyway for anybody to purchase a knife if you're under the age of 18. So that is actually uh, uh, enforced. So I think perhaps this new law is only there to strengthen that. But of course, it might help in certain cases, but like you mentioned, we would have to re-engage more on the educational side for young people. Once they're aware of the dangers, once they're aware of the implications of actually carrying a knife or actually physically stabbing somebody with a knife, then the decision making process they get through is better informed. Then the outcomes of those decisions will be better for the public.
So, how do these like new laws affect? How would you think these new laws would affect like local businesses or local businesses and communities in Nottingham?
Yeah, so the new law, if the law comes in to actually criminalize anybody selling a knife to an underage, is has to be a good thing, because the traders themselves, the business people who are actually dealing in knives, will claim they're not actually selling any knife to any underage anywhere. That's what they will claim. So if this law is there to make it easier for the police to actually catch the culprits, then I think that really shouldn't in any way harm for businesses. But perhaps it should make the communities and the public safer.
Cool. So yeah, I know you like to talk a lot about solutions in with the knife crime. But could you like reflect on knife crime prevention proposals, such as modifying kitchen knives, knife designs to reduce stabbings, as suggested by British movie star Idris Elba?
Yeah, it goes to the same thing, is doing everything we can. So yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea, but it's one idea that we should be doing, and then we go on to the next one, and the next one, and it goes down to that thing. If we can help if that helps one person by doing that, then it's a success, and then we go on to the next thing that we potentially think is a good idea. So yeah, I'm all for any type of solution that doesn't impact anyone massively at all, which it won't. And yeah, so it's just a positive.
Yeah, well, I think, like you mentioned, if there is any measure or there is any new innovation or a new idea that would help kind of reduce or have some impact on young people carrying knives, or the chances of increase the chances of somebody carrying a knife being detected, I think has to be a good thing. But it is really, really a difficult thing to address if people willingly want to carry a knife for whatever reason. So I think that is more of a reason that is what we need to tackle. But if we need physical kind of interventions, we might need to consider having metal detectors and public transport and buses and trains and things like that to be able to. But that really would require having security guards in there who can actually physically search young people if they're traveling. So these are some of the things perhaps would be very, very difficult to enforce, but all solutions should be considered when it comes to reducing the chances of young people carrying knives or using knives.
So, do you guys think that aggressive behavior in men and boys kind of contribute to knife crime, and how does organizations like ourselves, FYA, and Stand Up to Knife Crime, Nottingham, kind of, can we make it seem like we're creating a safer environment for people out there?
I think community groups coming together and doing things positive will make an impact in terms of like young boys and young lads. We already know we're talking like that's the issue when it's not. There's a hundred other issues that go into it. We don't, that it's around talking to people. I mean, it sounds like all my answers end up sounding the same, because I think we can go in and talk and talk and talk and talk, but it's around making sure that the young people are actually heard. Everyone's, we sit in a room and we say, oh, knife crime's bad. It's like, yep, everyone knows that. And when it's like, we need more and more of the young people in the room speaking. I think that's how you almost get it. So do I think we should be addressing like toxic masculinity and all that? Yeah, of course, but we should also be concentrating on all the other factors and finding out from them as well what they think the root cause is, because we sometimes don't understand it, so we should be speaking to them about it. And when you speak to them about it, it's eye-opening and it's terrifying. And I think sometimes we'll sit in a room and we'll come up with a solution when the solution can be right in front of us, and we're almost saying, you just go and sit over there for a minute, we're talking, when it's like they should be part of that conversation from the get-go.
Yeah, so yeah, I will re-echo that. It's like understanding that particular young person. So is what they express outwardly is the behavior we consider as aggressive. But internally, what is responsible for that is what we need to understand. And the way to do that is actually to hear them. Like you said, they need to be heard. And also, perhaps to have a solution in place where they will be part of that solution as well. So what we could do as community organizations like ourselves, FIA and similar organizations, is actually to create that space for young people to be able to express themselves. But of course, we're limited. Of course, the third sector is squeezed for funding. These things are becoming even harder. Like I mentioned, all of the community centers are getting closed by the city council. So young people got even less space to go to. In certain communities where they are actually mainly underprivileged communities, they don't even have access to football fields because the schools are closing their gates, or they're not doing the lines for them. They can't even play their home matches in there. So all of this is having a negative impact on young people. They cannot express themselves. They cannot engage in something positive within their local communities. They end up getting on the bus and just loitering in the city center. That's where fights happen. That's where they come in contact with different postcodes and things happen. So once we're able to create amenities locally, and we have community organizations like ours, the FY and others that are made accessible to these young people to come in and explore things they're interested in, whether that is in podcasting or music or whatever. I think that really would be a way to help them channel that aggression they have into those positive areas rather than taking it out on the streets with knives.
Cool. So last question. How do you guys think social media could play a part in preventing knife crime? Would it cause more harm than good, or vice versa?
I saw something recently, which because I think I've always been I've came off social media apart from the event, but with someone blocked it out where we're in, I think it was the 1950s, we blamed rock and roll. And then in this, we blamed this. And in this generation, we blame this. It's around not telling a young person not to use social media and to come off social media, but how to use it in the best way and how to use it positively. And if that student's in a good space, if a young person's in a good place and they're like doing music and they're promoting themselves and they're doing gigs or whatever, then that's probably one of the best platforms ever. And we've seen people do really well from that and make a living from it. If you're in a negative space and then you're accessing social media and no one's there to give you that support, then it's going to be negative. But it's all around where their head's at in the first place. So I can go to social media and I'm okay because I'm in an okay space. But algorithms and all the other stuff, if you're in a negative space and you start to search certain things, that's the stuff that you're going to see.
Yeah.
So it can be dangerous, but it goes back to the fact of the young person and where their head's at that time. So it's about making sure that they're not just on social media, not just doing things, but like I said, going to play football or going to do music or dance or whatever it is, or writing or all these things that they can do, and giving them the space to do those things. Because then the social media can be a massive platform for them in a positive way rather than a negative way.
Yeah, you're right. Just to add to that.
Drop mic. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Yeah. Just to add to that, like it's right. The social media is quite difficult to regulate because people hide. Everybody could be a keyboard warrior. You come up with anything, you can say anything, you can put out anything without actually disclosing your identity. So it is always going to be there. But what we need to do is to actually compete in that space to make sure the positives that are out there trying to deter young people from getting engaged in knife crime perhaps needs to outweigh the negative that selected individuals will use the social media for. So in that I think we need to use positive role models. Maybe people who have had terrible experiences, but they're able to come out and actually eloquently narrate that to the young people, their experiences, the regrets they had in their life. Once they're able to learn from those people, perhaps that will have a greater, more positive impact on them and their time they spend on the social media. Like you mentioned, once you started showing your interest in a particular genre or area in the social media, that's all your timeline gets fed in. So that's the only thing they actually get to see. So it is a difficult area. So it could be used for both positive and also negative reasons. And regulating is quite a challenge. But but we cannot relent in using the social media for positive reasons. So we'll have to try and do that even a bit more as organizations to project out that important preventative messages to young people against knife crime.
Cool. That was an amazing discussion. It was lovely to see you two chat. The two organizations come together and collab and give their two views. And hope everyone enjoys. And we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Nice one.
Hello, I am Idrissa Toure and I'm here on the FIA podcast on knife crime.
I'll introduce myself.
Oh, so I need to.
No, I'll introduce myself. That's good. It'll be good for the podcast. It'll get views. It might go on TikTok and get a little